Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We are live here today with our sponsor, ProCare Health, and with a wonderful, wonderful guest, Laura. And Laura, say hi.
Hey, everyone.
Laura and I met at it was World Obesity Conference was it California or Florida?
Florida.
Florida. And it was kind of a smaller conference, but to me, it was powerful. It was pretty interesting. And I just knew after meeting Laura, I was like, I just really wanted her to come and be on our forum because I feel like she has so much to offer. And for the people that are probably listening here today, today we're going to be talking about befriending your emotions to have confidence in your health is the topic. And Laura, I'm just going to kind of start. A lot of these people already know me, they've been on our calls before. So I'm just going to kind of turn it over and let you tell us about yourself and what got you interested in this field. And then just kind of streamline on into the conversation. I want to say though, before we begin, guys, I just noticed that there's some people. I want to say hi to everybody that's joining, and I'm going to be jumping on Facebook to kind of see if there's any comments there. During this presentation, guys, feel free to comment in the chat box. And also, there's an ask a question feature, a Q&A box if you're on Crowdcast. You're welcome to use that. If you're on Facebook, just put your questions in the chat box. Laura is going to answer as many questions as she can after she finishes her presentation. We're going to let her just kind of streamline everything and just kind of present thoroughly on her topic. And then she's going to be answering questions. So chat away in the box while she's talking. Okay, Laura.
Oh, thanks, Brenda. Um, so I kind of got started in this arena as a personal trainer originally. I was a obese kid and I broke 9 bones throughout my athletic career. And between the psychological challenges that I learned about growing up as an obese child and then the broken bones, I knew I wanted to be able to take care of my body. Plus, I really like helping people. And along that journey, I boycotted nutrition for about 5 years before I finally accepted for me to get my clients the results they wanted. I needed to look at nutrition. And it's weird because now I actually really love nutrition. It's like a creative outlet for me to find ways to eat in a healthy way, but also nourishing and tasty, because I always used to think it had to be kind of taste like crap to be healthy. Turns out that's not true. Um, but along my journey, I kept running into the same struggle with a lot of my clients. I could get them to lose weight very productively, build the right habits, but it was always a short fix. Within 6 months, they were always reverting back to their prior habits or their prior weight. And that wasn't really the service I wanted to give them. And so I got really curious and did some more research. And that's when I learned about coaching. And it's changed my life. It's changed my clients' life. I've had clients who have been able to sustain those habits and that weight loss for 3, 4, or 5 years now. And it really helped me understand that we have to start at the source, which is our brain, because our brain makes all of our decisions for us, whether we eat well, whether we don't. And through my 7+ years as a coach, I've seen some really obvious trends and themes that make being healthy and adopting, specific habits successful or not successful. And one of them, at the heart of a lot of it, are our emotions and our relationship with our emotions. So when Brenda and I got together and we kind of talked about what we thought would be the most impactful, we wanted to approach not emotional eating, but how to work with our emotions to create habits, to heal the relationship we have with food, to really create that, lasting impact that I think we all want. So with that, let me share my screen and we will get started with the presentation. All right, everyone can see that, right? Good. All right. So When I was 6 years old, I broke my arm. We happened to be at my aunt's house for a holiday, and I was playing outside with my cousins. And while we were playing on the hammock, I noticed these bugs over my head, and they were bugging me. So, like any bright 6-year-old, I thought, I know, I'll stand up and I'll shoo them away. And that's exactly what I did. Needless to say, I have not stood up on another hammock since. On this particular holiday, my mom was driving back from Indianapolis, so I was just with my dad. Now, I was a scrappy kid, always finding myself with bumps and bruises, so this time didn't seem too different. I remember crying as my dad carried me inside and gave me an ice pack. Then he offered me some of my aunt's world famous brownies that were my absolute favorite. But I said no. The next thing I remember was my dad calling my mom saying, "She said no to the brownies." To which my mom replied, "Take her to the hospital and I'll meet you there." Because I said no to food, that's how my parents knew something was wrong with me. And that's where my relationship with food begins. Similar to many of you, I wasn't taught how to fuel my body, but I also wasn't taught the relationship between food and our emotions. Like many of you, my relationship with food hasn't always been healthy. And now you're in a whole different space. Due to the surgery, there are more strict limitations in order to be successful. We've used food as a solution to many problems throughout the years, but it acts as a band-aid. My intention by speaking with you today is to enlighten you to a deeper rooted challenge many of us face, learning how to befriend our emotions in order to have confidence in your health. We're going to cover our limiting beliefs and how they're formed, how our beliefs influence our relationship with food and our emotions, what to expect when trying to change our beliefs, and of course, the good stuff, some solutions. So let's dive in. Our brain is the most powerful muscle we have. It has the power to influence us to lead a life we love or suffer through the life we have. But we haven't been taught how to use it or why it's so hard to change. Our conditioning is established primarily by the age of 8. That's when our subconscious mind is running the show, absorbing anything and everything it can. During this phase, the foundation of what we believe to be true about ourselves, others, and the world is established. There are hidden messages within our family, society, and our environment influencing what we think. Women typically hear some narrative about needing to be thin to be viewed as pretty, you need to be nice and not stir up trouble, to be perfect and make it look easy, or something along those lines. And men hear messages like, be a man, don't express your emotions that weak, eat meat, provide for your family, and so on. These narratives we hear in our home and when we're out in the world and all over ads, and they create our understanding of the world, and we believe these ideas as truth. This is just one of the ways we learn how the world works. Each of us will also have our own familial messages as well. Some common ones include clean plate club, as in you can't leave the table until your plate is clean. Dessert is a prize, as in you can't have dessert unless you eat your veggies. And I'm sure you are all very familiar with comfort food. It is literally there to comfort us. This gives us the belief foundation of our environment and the world. But the real doozy comes from how we adapt to our environment to seek safety. Emotional safety is a key part of childhood development. When our frontal cortex is offline, our main motivation is to survive. Emotional safety references how we learn to feel safe, loved, and like we belonged in our family. There are 9 common ways an undeveloped childhood mind learns to protect themselves in order to get some sense of the feeling of love, safety, and belonging. This is largely connected to our emotional soothing and our emotional eating. These 9 protectors of emotional safety grow to be ways that we then sabotage ourselves as adults. And it's normally the repercussions that drive us towards food. I'm going to touch on each of them, but if you're curious which ones you have, I encourage you to email me. You'll see my email at the top of the screen, and I'll send you the quiz that you can see the results of which ways you sabotage yourself. I'm going to highlight a couple characteristics of these 9 different voices. I encourage you to get curious within yourself if you think this is something you experience that might cause trouble when it comes to creating balance in the life you desire. The first is the avoider, where they focus on the positive and pleasant in an extreme way, avoiding difficult and unpleasant tasks and conflict. Next is the restless, constantly in search of greater excitement in the next activity or constant busyness. They're rarely at peace or content with the current activity. The pleaser indirectly tries to gain acceptance and affection by helping, pleasing, rescuing, or flattering others. They tend to lose sight of their own needs and become resentful as a result. Then there's the controller. The anxiety-based need to take charge and control of situations and people's actions to one's own will, resulting in high anxiety and impatience when that's not possible. The victim. Emotional and temperamental as a way to gain attention and affection, an extreme focus on internal feelings, particularly the painful ones, and they tend to have a bit of a martyr streak. Then there's the stickler, perfectionism and a need for order and organization taken too far. Hyper-rational, intense and exclusive focus on the rational processing of everything, including relationships, can be perceived as cold, distant, and intellectually arrogant. Hypervigilant, continuous intense anxiety about all the dangers and what could go wrong. Vigilance that can never rest. And the final one is the hyperachiever, dependent on constant performance and achievement for self-respect and self-validation, highly focused on external success, leading to unsustainable workaholic tendencies and a loss of touch with deeper emotional and relationship needs. I shared this with you to help you understand certain characteristics of psychological understandings that may cause you to sabotage yourself. We didn't get to guide on how to thrive as an adult. Thus, we're kind of writing it a bit as we go. So the foundation about what we believe about ourselves, others, and the world is established by the age of 8 based on the cultural messages we get growing up with, the learned messages in our home and environment, and how we adapted to our home to feel love, safety, and belonging. Then, so all that happens before age 8. Then our frontal cortex wakes up and it starts to filter information. Our brain consumes about 74 gigabytes of information every day. That's about the same amount as a highly educated person reads throughout their entire lifetime. But we gather that in a single day. But our brain doesn't absorb all of it. It filters it. This is where it gets interesting. How does it select what it chooses to absorb? Our filter's main purpose is to weed through all the information we gather to select information that confirms what we believe, creating a safety loop where our beliefs create our experience, and thanks to our filter, our experience confirm our beliefs. These beliefs then trigger a repetitive pattern of thoughts, which give way to a specific range of emotion, and every time we feel an emotion, an energy is released, causing a hormone to release. With practice, our brilliant body learns these patterns and creates a hormonal set point referred to as homeostasis. The challenge comes when we try to change. Our homeostasis perceives it as a threat and tries to regulate us. It's one of the main reasons so many people fail when trying to build new habits. They rely on willpower, not fully grasping what they will experience in order to change. This is massively important for the change you'll be experiencing, so please do pay close attention. When we try to change, our brain sends a threat alert through our body, causing a counter hormone to release. This hormone then makes us feel one of the many uncomfortable emotions we don't want to feel. Those feelings then prompt really negative and uncomfortable thinking, all with the intention of trying to provoke a regulating action. So I provided you an example. I used to be addicted to stress. When I realized I was burning myself out and damaging my marriage, I understood I was what needed to change. Thanks to the knowledge I now have as a coach, I was equipped and prepared, or so I thought. When I would try to take a break, I would feel a gravity pulling me back to the office. It almost felt like there were spiders crawling out of my skin. I would even randomly break into sweats if I didn't manage my mind. I'd hear thoughts like, what are you doing? You're going to fail. Entrepreneurs have to work tirelessly. You know that. You're not tough enough to make it. You're worthless. But that was the change loop. It was the uncomfortable feelings and thoughts my brain was using to try and warn me I was threatened. But knowing what I know, I knew I needed to teach my body and my brain that taking a break was also safe, meaning those thoughts and feelings weren't real. And I didn't have to believe them. I didn't have to give in to them. I had to teach my body a different way of being. I share this because what people typically don't think about when building new habits is they're also talking about breaking old, comfortable, familiar habits. Habits our brain knows, likes, and are proven survivable. We need to be aware that the discomfort we feel, it's a good thing. It's the energy of change. And we need to be able to identify it as that, or we'll fall victim to our own brain. But you don't just have to sit in that discomfort. You can challenge it. The beautiful thing about our mind is it is a problem-solving device. When left to its own devices, the main problems our brains will seek are threats. Now, the good news is most of us aren't being attacked by lions and bears anymore. Instead, our brain will seek psychological threats. We can use this skill to our advantage by implanting our own problems in the form of questions. Now, because our brain tends to think in a one-track mind, it won't be as automatic as your normal question response. The main difference is you're looking to ask intentional and specific questions that cause cognitive dissonance or mental confusion. So let's say you have a limiting belief that you won't be accepted until you're thin. And you see all these thin models on Instagram laughing and loving with friends and lovers. And all that data is confirming your limiting belief. Now, normal questions you might come up with would be, what's wrong with you? Why can't you get your life together? Those are not the questions I'm suggesting we ask. Instead, lodge a question like, what facts prove that those staged photos are true acceptance? How do I know I can be accepted just as I am? What do people in my life love and accept about me? What do I love and accept about myself? You get the idea. Now, obviously, don't rattle them all off at once. You need to give yourself a little bit of space to curiously, not judgmentally, but curiously inquire. Your brain won't have the answer right away, and that's the point. It's going to confuse it a little bit, but if you sit with the question and keep asking yourself that with patience, your brain will give you an answer because it's a problem that needs solving. The reason this is so effective is because it balances your mind. I'm not sure if anyone has seen the movie Inside Out. If you haven't, it's totally worth a watch. But our mind is much like that. Pretty much, you have a conference table in your head with different emotional voices sitting there. Some act as dictators, while others barely speak up. Based on your state of homeostasis, your hormonal balance, your brain is used to specific voices running the show. By asking questions with the intent to confuse your brain, especially when triggered into one of your limiting beliefs, you give your brain a chance to find balance. You give the mic to some of those softer, more supportive voices. And that's the goal. Changing your limiting beliefs is a bit more elaborate. And as I previously stated, I do encourage you to reach out, and I'm happy to offer anyone who's interested a free call to decode some of yours and help you get started on the 5-step process to change them. But it's a lot to take in. So for now, asking questions is a great place to get started. So hopefully you're understanding a bit more about how we work as a human being. A lot of you are here because the actions you've taken previously, or you want to change them moving forward. But I do hope you see for the equation to work, you need to start at the source, your thoughts and your feelings. So how does this all affect your relationship with food? Drastically. If you reference what I started with earlier about how our homeostatic hormonal balance responds to change, you'll remember I said it freaks out, but more sciencey. If you've ever been an emotional eater or an avoider, then this is where the challenge will lie. At the end of the day, we give our emotions their power because we avoid them. When we do that, we treat a symptom, eating, not the cause, what we believe about ourselves. So that's what you're up against. Whew. But now, let's talk some solutions. Our state of being is summarized by how we act, think, and feel. which is why the absolute best thing you can do is train your mindset. Our mind works like a thermostat, meaning if you set your house at 70 and it gets to 74, AC naturally kicks in and brings your house right back down to 70. Your mind does the same thing. For example, let's say your 70 is believing you're not good enough. If you start to have enough experiences that challenge that belief, aka you start to feel like you are good enough, let's call that your 74, your mind will conjure up thoughts that lead you to experience more situations to prove you're not good enough. It doesn't matter if your 70, your present mindset, is enjoyable. What matters is that it's survivable. There are really only two states of being, beautiful or suffering. People who find themselves in the beautiful mindset feel empowered, intentional, awake, motivated, inspired. Whereas people who are suffering find themselves feeling bad, anxious, disempowered, on autopilot, unintentional, and often feel stuck in a why me headspace. It's worth noting that our mind is more predisposed to a suffering mindset because we view negative emotions as a problem, and our mind is a problem solving device. If you can grow into a state of acceptance that it is necessary to experience both the beautiful mindset and the suffering to enjoy the full capacity life has to offer, it stops the negative from becoming a problem and thus stops our brain from automatically focusing on it. You have to be aware and mindful of how you are thinking. Do you interpret setbacks and obstacles as happening to you or for you? We have an idea of what our life is supposed to look like. If we think back past all your successes and accomplishment, you had your doubts and you had your fears. This life will all come together for you. It's your job to learn the lessons, take time and energy to grow and enjoy those little moments. Within that mindset, we need to reconnect with our emotions because we get so zoomed into that moment, we don't see the big picture of how it's all really coming together. The true purpose of our emotions are to motivate us. They lie in a part of our brain referred to as our limbic system, and this brain has three objectives: seek pleasure, avoid pain, and conserve energy. That is the foundation of our motivation. But as emotional beings, we also have emotional needs, which is why we need to learn to respect all of our emotions. We misinterpret our emotions. For so long, we've been conditioned that our emotions are bad when really they're neither good nor bad. How we think about our emotions is what gives them power. Consider this. When you felt angry or sad, it's like you can't escape that emotion. But when you feel joy, it's like you can't hold on to it. So why the difference? Well, how often do you try to avoid joy? Most people say never. Emotions are the body's way of communicating what we need. They act as our internal GPS. If we need connection, we might feel lonely. If we feel sad, we might need time to heal. If we feel resentment, we're likely not feeling appreciated. We've been conditioned to numb ourselves with food, but we need to try and give ourselves space to understand the deeper need that's calling out. One of the main reasons we reach for food with negative emotions is because we don't like how they make us feel. And the chemical reaction of food, specifically sugar, is to release dopamine, which makes us feel a little bit better. We've been taught to use food to cope with challenging emotions. Food is no longer used for fuel, but to escape, numb, and distract. We're living in a society that is afraid of discomfort. We'll do pretty much anything to avoid it. These attempts to avoid it become our habitual patterns to deal with discomfort, and that pattern our body gets addicted to and becomes our new state of homeostasis. Our tendency to avoid uncomfortable emotions and instead seek pleasure creates a destructive and addictive pattern. Each time we take a hit or a bite, we tilt the scales of our pain-pleasure balance toward the pleasure side. What we don't realize is each time we tilt the scales toward the pleasure side, we make it harder and harder to find balance. Meaning, the more we soothe ourselves with food, the bigger and harder it is to face the very discomfort we're trying to escape. In a way, our food addiction is due to our inability to manage our emotions. And by soothing ourselves with food, we make it harder and harder to break that addiction. It's similar to anyone who's scrolled through social media and at the end you feel lonely, bored, or blah. That's the discomfort of your pain-pleasure balance trying to regulate itself. Redefining how we relate to food means we need to do some internal work to break the emotional conditioning. And that means learning to become comfortable with the uncomfortable. We misunderstand our comfort zone. We view it as a concrete box, but in reality, our comfort zone is fluid. Think about when you've entered into a new job. At first, you were a little uncertain, a little uncomfortable. You wanted to do well, but you didn't fully understand your role and the expectations. But after a couple months, it started to become second hat. After a few years, you could pretty much do it in your sleep. But wait a minute. At first, this job was out of your comfort zone, and now it's in your comfort zone. So what changed? Practice. Really, our comfort zone speaks to our level of experience. Using the same example, when you enter into a new job, you might have previous experience, but you don't have experience at that job, which makes you uncomfortable. But as you gain experience, you feel more comfortable. Simply by switching your terminology from comfort to experience can have a huge impact. Because when you say, I'm inexperienced, you know what you need to feel better. Experience. But when you say you're uncomfortable, a lot of the times we just look at that as a stop sign and we don't know what to do with it. As I mentioned above, we give our emotions their power because we try to avoid them, because we're uncomfortable, or should I say, inexperienced with processing them. It's our avoidance that strengthens the very discomfort. But when we practice processing these uncomfortable, inexperienced emotions and learn to respect and value each emotion, the need to soothe with food dissipates as our capabilities expand. The better we get at understanding the underlying need and then supporting ourselves by tending to that need, the less hold food or any sabotaging habit will have. At the heart of all of this emotional data is vulnerability. What isn't talked about is the power within vulnerability. Yeah, that's right. I said power. When we tend to think of vulnerability, we tend to think of weakness. But some of the bravest acts are made in vulnerability. Take our military, for example. When members of the military are asked about moments when they didn't feel vulnerable while in combat, the soldiers stood up and answered there weren't any. Every moment of combat requires us to face vulnerability and stare it in the eyes. Brene Brown defines vulnerability as risk, emotional exposure, and uncertainty. This is at the heart of all emotions, even the desirable ones. Take happiness as an example. Some people, when feeling an abundance of happiness, start to fear losing that happiness, almost weirdly foreshadowing that something bad is going to happen. But really, that's just the ups and downs of life. By doing that, by not facing that vulnerability within that happiness, you steal your own happiness because you're afraid of the fall. Vulnerability is part of life. It comes down to the power within, which lies in our choice. We won't be able to escape vulnerability. It will find us as it is so integrated in a meaningful life. The choice lies in how we experience it. We can avoid it and hide from it, ultimately weakening our ability to face it, likely increasing our tendency to be controlled by it. Or we can face it. We can choose it. We can know it will feel scary as hell and be brave enough to feel our stuff, taking command back over our lives. It's a choice of if you want to be a cow or a bull. I'm not sure if you know this, but they respond very differently to a storm. When cows see a storm coming, they run away from it, but they end up getting trapped in their stable, ultimately causing them to endure the storm longer. Whereas when a bull sees a storm coming, they charge straight through it, minimizing their time spent in the storm. If you struggle to see the power and vulnerability, then I encourage you to reach out and I'm happy to send you some resources. But first, let's take a quick survey. Just answer for yourself. Who here prefers sunny days to rainy days? Now, those who said they prefer sunny days, let me ask you this. Do you think you'd be able to appreciate the beauty of the sun had you never experienced the rain? Most people say no. And it's the same thing with our emotions. What we don't understand is when we hide from our uncomfortable emotions, we also limit our experience of our positive emotions. So as you learn to sit with uncomfortable or inexperienced emotions, you can understand you're doing so not only to break your addiction to food, but also to have a greater experience of happiness, joy, and peace. Let me tell you a story to help you see how breaking your emotional conditioning to food plays out in real life. I am a daddy's girl through and through. If you can't tell, that is my dad. The first time he went to the hospital, I stopped by the grocery store to grab a thing of edible cookie dough to eat beside him in his hospital bed. But unfortunately, my dad does not have the best health. So he has been frequent in the hospital. Not too long ago, he was back there. And if I'm being honest with you, I was absolutely terrified. My dad is the coolest, and I thought I was going to lose him. Sadness and fear dominated my days. So I leaned on my coping menu. I walked in a lot of beautiful parks, I meditated a lot, and I journaled until my hand wanted to fall off. But 3 days later, I found myself in front of a cold stone. I went home with my pint of ice cream, ready to emotionally numb. I had about 3 bites before I threw it out. When I got back to the couch, my husband asked, "What's wrong?" And I told him, "It's not working." "What do you mean it's not working? It's ice cream. How can it not work?" He said. And I told him I didn't actually want the ice cream. I just wanted a break from the sadness that had been consuming me. I share this to illustrate that it's not a perfect practice and it takes time, but it's about slowly stretching yourself until the food really loses its appeal. And if you notice from my story, I tried 3 practices from my coping menu. I lasted 3 days longer than I had in previous situations. And ultimately, I ended up throwing out the ice cream. That's progress, and I'm proud. So here's the 5-step process I have my clients use to learn how to decode their emotional need. First, properly label your feelings specifically. I have all my clients download and favorite a feeling wheel. Looks something like this. Mine's actually double-sided. We tend to summarize our entire emotional dialect with happy, sad, good, bad, and mad. But we use them so much that they've lost their meaning. They're rather diluted. The feeling wheel acts as a prompt to help you better label and understand your feeling. Then we go to step 2 and 3. Define the feeling as you would to a 5-year-old and make sure your definition fits all experiences of that emotion. So once you label the emotion, you want to consider a 5-year-old is trying to communicate that exact emotion to you as what they're feeling. And you're going to label it and define it for them. You start all emotional definitions with that is what arises in you when. So as an example, let's say the child is feeling disrespected. My definition to a 5-year-old would be, oh, that's disrespected. It's what arises in you when you don't feel heard or like anyone cares what you think. I would then pause and reflect on previous experiences when I felt disrespected. If the definition checks out, I would keep going. If not, I would reword or think it through. If you struggle to come up with a definition, a good baseline that you can resort to with uncomfortable emotions are, this is what comes up when something I care about or something that's important to me feels uncertain or threatened. What's most important is that you have a clear understanding of how it makes you feel. This isn't about a proper dictionary definition. It's about how you understand the emotion. Then we move to step 4, applying the definition to your current circumstance. For example, when my husband and I first moved in together, he would not help out around the house. For me, the line between disrespected and rage was very thin. So I experienced it as rage. And I would yell at him, not understanding that I was feeling disrespected. Nothing changed. Then I worked these very steps and I realized I wasn't mad. I felt disrespected. When I then calmly explained how it made me feel, he understood. However, before I even told him I needed to restore my feeling of respect, This is an important part of the process. We don't want to give our authority away to others and leave it in their hands for them to comfort us. We need to claim our own power and learn how to satisfy our own needs. So before I communicated it with him, I made a list of all the ways I could make myself feel respected. It included a new email system, scheduling time to clean the house, and scheduling in time for me as well, and pre planning weekends on my calendar for fun. Notice that none of my suggestions were specific to my circumstance, and that's okay. It's about restoring that feeling of respect. Then comes step 5. Create a list of 3 actionable things you can do to feel safer. A key distinction is in the language that I need to point out. Safer. The whole reason you're feeling something is because you aren't feeling safe. You won't be able to change that. But that doesn't mean you can't improve your experience of safety by making yourself feel safer and supported. So that's how you decode and learn to translate your emotions to understanding the need it's motivating you toward. This process helps you befriend all of your emotions because it helps you understand the underlying purpose of them, not just feel stuck in the energy of them. However, before I move on to the next tool, I highly advise you to create a scale for key emotions you experience. Because of our environment, our psychology is automatically conditioned to neglect or ignore some of these emotions. We typically don't recognize them until we're experiencing them like an 8 on our scale. But I think we can all agree it's easier to move through frustration rather than anger. Frustration is like a 3 or 4 on an anger scale. By recognizing warning signals and creating a scale, you make it easier for you to regulate your energy and, by proxy, your hormones. So as an example, this is my stress scale. At a 1 to 2, I start to notice I'm switching between screens and I'm starting to lose track of time. At a 3 to 4, I start to feel like there's a lot on my plate and I'm not sure where to start. At a 5 to 6, I start to feel more urgent and like I don't have time to take even a 2-minute break. At a 7 to 8, I notice pressure and start to get anxious, fearing I won't be able to get things done or show up as I desire. At a 9 to 10, I'm extremely focused. I might cry. I have a very short fuse. Nothing really exists besides the task at hand. By recognizing your scale, you also get to identify your threshold. As in a point when you reach it, you can't really walk yourself back or process through the emotion without extreme time. On my scale, I aim for a 3 or 4, but if I get past the 5 or 6 and don't do something to support myself, I'm going down a rabbit hole fast. As you heard me say when referencing my story with my dad in the hospital, I leaned on my coping menus, and that's what I want to talk about next. Because we weren't taught how to cope, many of us don't have great tools to resort to. What I found is what we seek when we turn to food is to change our present state and feel more positive. However, feeling a different negative is also something worth exploring. Hear me out. If you remember when I was previously talking about how we create an addictive pattern with food, building on the pain pleasure balance, making it harder for us to balance out, kind of like we do when we scroll and then we feel lonely, bored, and blah. One very, very effective way to cope with challenging emotions is cold exposure. Personally, I hate the cold. I literally moved from Chicago to Florida because I can't stand it. But if I neglected my emotional scale and I've allowed that energy to build beyond what I can manage, I'll put my hands in really cold water for as long as I can. If that doesn't work, it typically works. I don't like doing this latter one. I'll submerge my face in ice cold water for 30 seconds to a minute based on my breathing. Just to be clear, in no way am I suggesting you inflict pain upon yourself. What I'm suggesting is you capitalize on the discomfort of the pain pleasure balance. Because when you submerge yourself in cold, your body has to balance out from that discomfort. So when you're done, your body releases dopamine, which naturally makes you feel better the same way you get it from food. Along the same lines, another great tool for your coping menu is movement or stretching. It requires so many physiological shifts in our heart rate, our blood pressure, our breathing. It takes priority within our emotional state because physical threats are more important than psychological ones because if we're not here Doesn't really matter if our feelings are hurt. Personally, putting on one of my favorite songs from high school and dancing it out is typically very effective for me. Now, if you're not in the mood to exercise, totally get that. Been there. But stretching is very impactful and often neglected. Similar to the cold exposure, the discomfort we feel physically when we stretch leans on that pain side of the pain pleasure balance and focuses our attention on the physical pain rather than the emotional pain. And when we're done, we naturally get that dopamine release, which makes us feel better. But that's enough of that side of the scale, the pain side of the scale. There are other great tools that include exposing yourself to nature or different elements. Authentic nature is great and ideal, but you can try internet nature and see if that works for you too. Some of the other things that are very useful on my coping menu include podcast. I have a wide variety, and typically listening to something different tends to help me change my perspective about the very thing I'm struggling with, and it helps me see things through a different lens. Journaling, it's hit or miss for me. It very much depends on what I'm working through. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I have to feel through it, and you kind of learn with practice what it does work for and what it doesn't. Meditating is the same way. If I've honored my scale and I'm below that threshold, meditating tends to be very effective, especially ones that are guided towards shifting your perspective. But if I'm past that threshold, meditation does not work. One of my personal favorites is laughing. It's fantastic. I have a folder in YouTube of funnies that range from bloopers to dogs walking in those little mittens. That's so funny. Stand-up comedians and more. It just always makes me feel lighter and better. Playing with my pets, their snuggles, I always find fun and comforting. It just grounds me in what I have in my life. Doing a puzzle or reading, again, it takes my mind off the emotional heat until I can process it better later. Again, these things aren't suggestions to not deal. They're just things to help you expand. But my absolute favorite, laughter, I would say, is second. Cold exposure is when I'm beyond the threshold and very impactful. But my absolute favorite is yoga nidra. That's a gold standard. It's where you sit or lie with your eyes closed and guide your energy from body part to body part. And actually, I would like to give you a short demo right now. So if you would, please close your eyes. Just take some deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Continue breathing and feel your butt in the chair. Feel your chest rise and fall with your breath. Keeping your eyes closed, I'm going to ask you to direct your attention to different parts of your body without moving your body part. Just focus all of your energy on that specific body part as I guide your energy there. Starting with your right hand thumb, pointer finger, middle finger, ring finger, pinky finger, between the fingers, palm of hand, back of hand, wrist, forearm, elbow, upper arm, right shoulder, right collarbone, right chest, left chest, left collarbone, left shoulder, left upper arm, left elbow, left forearm, wrist, back of hand, palm of hand, between the fingers on your left hand, left pinky, ring finger, middle finger, pointer finger, left hand thumb, your entire left arm, your entire right arm, both arms together. Take a deep breath in, hold it at the top, inhale a little bit more, and then slowly release out and come back to the presentation when you're ready. So that's a very brief example of what Yoga Nidra does. But what I have found to be so effective about Yoga Nidra, especially when I'm trying to soothe myself or work with my emotions, is a lot of people complain with meditation that their brain just keeps going everywhere and they can't catch their thoughts. Totally guilty myself as well. It moves so quickly that if you don't pay attention, you lose where you're at. And it has a very calming effect because it grounds us in our physical, which helps bring our blood flow back to the smart part of our brain rather than the stressed part of our brain. So Yoga Nidra is a personal favorite for me. But with that, I want to highlight some key takeaways. We get conditioned by the narratives we hear within our home, in our environment, and our culture. These narratives create the foundation of what we believe to be true about ourselves, others, and the world, along with the adaptive strategies we develop to feel safe in our home. Then, at around age 8, our mental filter wakes up, activates, and starts to filter information, choosing to absorb based on what we already believe. This creates a safety loop where our beliefs create our experience and our experience confirm our beliefs. Then our beliefs create our thoughts, which prompt our emotions, causing our hormones to release. And with practice, this becomes our state of being in our hormonal state of homeostasis. Changing this pattern is uncomfortable. An opposing hormone is released, prompting uncomfortable feelings, initiating hurtful thoughts, all with the hope of provoking you back to a regulating action. Our brain is a problem-solving device. Capitalizing on it by asking intentional questions that make you think and prove the opposite true is a skill and a gold standard. Emotions are the language of the body. It's how our needs are communicated with us. The true purpose of our emotions is to motivate us, but we avoid them because they're uncomfortable or inexperienced. We've relied on food to stabilize our energy rather than being brave enough to experience our emotions and learn what our body is calling out for. We need to choose our power within being vulnerable to regain command of our mind. Practice scaling your emotions so you can care for yourself before the energy is too heavy. Build a coping menu you can resort to that's impactful to help support you as you learn to care for all of your needs. What isn't typically discussed is the fact that what we believe about ourselves, it creates the destructive patterns with food, and that is sourced at our emotions. By befriending our emotions as essential key players in your well-being, you regain confidence in yourself and within your health. And with that being said, I know that you guys could be anywhere and that you chose to listen to me. And I hope that you got some nuggets here that you were able to use and apply. And if there's any way that I can support you, please scan the QR code. All of those things you can email me for. It's just going to take you to my email. Obviously, tell me what you would want. That would be helpful. But I know that building these habits, changing your lifestyle, it's not easy work, but that doesn't mean you have to do it alone. And I really appreciate your attention and this time. So now, if there are any questions, let's hear it.
I'm going to unmute myself. Oh, Laura, that was wonderful. I took a lot of notes. You had some great points. I liked how you really shared about how the emotions, how to listen, and the 5-step process that you about labeling your emotions and defining them, and then really helping to kind of bring them into awareness so that you can change them. You can't do anything unless you change them. I mean, unless you're aware of them. So just being aware. And also it helps dissolve them right there. Like instead of re-experiencing the same thing over and over and over, over and over and over, you're being triggered, you experience it. once you have that resolution, you won't be experiencing the same thing over and over again. Just like you said with your dad and coming home and eating the ice cream, the same thing doesn't work. It takes other tools. There is a question here. I'm going to kind of go to the Q&A button. It looks like Letitia says, I have teenage girls and it's so hard to talk to them about food. We are all in therapy, but I'm wondering what should I do when they eat their feelings? I am nagging, or it says, I feel I am nagging, or they get mad at me if I talk about this. So do you have any ideas on how she might go at that at a different angle?
I do. As a former teenage girl who used to eat her problems, the last thing we want to do is really listen to our mom. My mom had all the right intentions, but I didn't really want to listen to her either. The best thing you can do is display it, model it for them. Doesn't necessarily have to be to them, but maybe in front of them, you can talk about, like, I had a really hard day and I wanted to come home and have some Doritos, but I just listened to this awesome presentation by Laura and I decided to try her 5-step process. And I realized this is what it was trying to motivate me towards. And I'm really happy that I did that because I feel like I actually got something from it, because at the end of the day, your concern comes from the most loving place, but they're not going to want to listen to you. And it's not about them eating their emotions. It's about them feeling emotionally safe enough to have an outlet. And if you can model that, I think that would be way more, would have been way more effective for me, because then I would understand what to do. But if we don't communicate through that process, they don't really know what to do for themselves.
Laura, can I add to that? Maybe like an example. Like I'm thinking, like let's say that Letitia sees her daughter going in and being upset about something, and just going and maybe eating ice cream. Since we were talking about the ice cream, maybe kind of like what you were talking about earlier. That second step about defining as you would a 5-year-old. Maybe you say, you know what, right now I see that you're eating ice cream. That makes me feel like I want to try to help you with, you're putting it back on you. Like, I feel like that there's something bothering you, and that's maybe why you're eating. Would you say that's true? Or do you think that would upset her saying something like that? I feel like,
Well, I mean, every teenage girl is going to be different, and every relationship with a teenage girl and her mother is going to be different. I could see that having conflict with some. I can see that not having conflict with some. I can speak from my experience and my experience with my friends. I would not point out the food as the key to why you feel like there's something wrong. You could potentially be like, hey, how was your day? It seems like your energy's off. Is there something that's bothering you? Or I want to be here and provide a safe space for you to talk about it. If if you want, if not, no worries. And give her that power of choice. Let her know you're there. But they don't want to feel pressured like they have to talk to you about it, or they're not going to. They want to feel like it's their choice, because at that point they're kind of trying to learn more autonomy, become more independent.
yeah, I definitely like that angle a lot better than kind of pointing it out, because then you're kind of in their face. And maybe that would be, for some people, that might be offensive. I can see that.
And
I mean, it would
they're already
be
going to be
me.
hypersensitive because you guys are in
Mhm.
therapy, so they're already feeling, you know, not targeted, but just more sensitive around that. And it could even be a question you ask them, like, in therapy, when I see you, making choices that it seems like you might be emotionally soothing, how do you want me to support you in that moment? Like, what can I do for you? And again, give them the floor. Are they going to get it right every single time? No, but at least they're going to continue to learn what support would look like, even if they don't know it in that exact moment.
I think one of the hardest things as being a parent or having close relationships with people, like maybe it's your children, your husband, your friends, is that we don't like to see people hurt. We don't like to hurt ourselves, but we also don't like to see people hurt. And sometimes it's hard when we see something and we want to try to be that quote problem solver. We want to go in and try to make them feel better, but really, a lot of times there's not anything you can do to make people feel better. Sometimes it's just about raising your own energy. When you're around someone else that's happy, or you're around someone else that's feeling better, instead of coming down to that level of being sad or being unhappy and feeling all their pain, if you can just kind of put yourself in a better place and maybe bring them up. I don't know. That's another suggestion too.
Yeah. I really like Brene Brown's approach to parenting. She's a shame researcher, and she talks a lot about the difficulties of parenting, because let's be real, it is hard. Um, and she talked about how our desire to help them to fix their emotional state, so to speak, speaks more to our discomfort with them feeling that. But our need to fix their emotional state also sends the message that that emotion isn't allowed, that emotion isn't okay. When really holding space for them to feel whatever they need to feel is a more supportive way of creating belonging. And I like how you kind of said that, Brenda, like just giving them the floor to feel that and not feeling the need to, but you can ask, are you looking for support right now? Or are you looking for me to listen? And in a way, it's kind of dual accountability, because you're teaching them to learn what they need, how to ask for support, what that looks like, but also teaching them that it's safe to feel whatever they're feeling. And as an individual who doesn't like feeling the uncomfortable feelings of the people they love, super guilty. I often have to take space. Like if my husband's in a really bad mood, I'll ask him like what he needs. He'll tell me. I just have to hear it. And then I'm like, I sit there for probably 2 minutes. I literally like time it on my watch. And then I'm like, oh, I need to go grab my water in the other room. And I just do that brief yoga nidra I kind of run you through, just to kind of like recenter myself, because it's important that for me, it's important that he can hold that space, or I can hold that space, so he can feel whatever he needs to feel without feeling like I have to fix it for him.
Yeah, because everybody has to do their own processing, and it's so easy to try to fix that, because we're, a lot of us are people pleasers, including myself. I do not like having dis-peace on anything. Like, I'm a peaceful, I want everything to be peaceful, but it's not always that way. And so sometimes we have to be okay with being like that and understand it's not you. When somebody else is doing something or being something or whatever that doesn't feel comfortable to you, it's not about them. It's about you fixing yourself. Like Laura said, just kind of getting into space of kind of breathing or just moving away from the situation, letting them have their space, and letting them fix it, quote, fix it themselves, like improve their own emotional state. Um, Once you bring your own emotional state up, it's much easier to help them too.
Yes, that's a great point. Like, as a parent, modeling, talking through, like, we don't tend to talk about our emotions. That's why so many of us adults please to try and kind of get rid of it. We feel like it needs to be fixed rather than just be with it. And that's why I like the 5 steps, because it's not saying you can't sit in the discomfort of sadness, but you can understand the purpose. And if there's purpose to these uncomfortable emotions, they just don't feel as pointless. They feel more purposeful, and that you can learn to really care for yourself and your needs to a much greater depth. And in a weird way, it's like monologuing in front of your kids. Like, yes, it's easier if you have a partner or a friend or someone in the house that you can share it with. Even asking them for permission to like show your humanity, like, mom had a rough day and this is what it looked like. I tried doing this, it didn't work. I went to cold stone, that didn't work. But then I tried this thing and it made me feel more purposeful. So I guess I'm grateful for it, but man, it was a rough day. And then just kind of let them sit with it, because they're listening. They just don't want you to tell them what to do. Is that helpful, Letitia?
Yeah. See what she says. I'm looking on Facebook. If anybody's listening on our Facebook, please feel free to comment too. Um, Laura, while we're waiting for that, you want to tell people, I'm going to go ahead and copy and put your email address one more time
Okay.
in here in case anybody decides they'd like to reach out. Is there anything specifically that you would like to promote or say about what you do and share with them how you might be able to help them if they're wanting some additional support in any way?
Yeah, I, from my experience, the greatest way I've been able to have an impact is through giving a free one-on-one call. Uh, Everyone has their own story, everyone has their own limitations, and especially if you take that emotional quiz, like the saboteur quiz, you're probably going to want to know like what to do now that you have that information. I encourage you to book a free call after that. Um, the reason being why I encourage that honestly is it's not about me in that moment. Like it's really genuinely about you. I love helping people. That's why I do what I do. I don't want people to unnecessarily suffer. And we really get to get through some of your obstacles in that call and give you an action plan forward that you can really use to create the change in your life. Because the main thing that I've realized through my 13 plus years in the change industry is our mind works for us and against us. And we can't believe everything that we think, and we need to understand how to differentiate and create space in our own head. And I've been to therapists. I would have never understood that if I didn't talk to a coach and then by proxy become a coach. So the best thing I can do for you guys is to give you an hour of just my brain to like help you work through some of your stuff. But any of the handouts are going to be helpful. And by all means, if there's anything that you need, please don't hesitate to reach out. I have a lot of different resources that I love to give away because, again, this is about spreading that health and sharing it. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and I just posted your website too because you have a lot of fun things on there and a lot of great resources and just um, kind of tells them more about you and your personality and stuff like that. So I posted that as well. And I just want to thank you. I don't see any more questions right now. Let me kind of just double check. Philip had his hand up, but he was just saying about being that was a great meditation. And really and truly, like if you can find a way to get back to your center, like you're talking about, there's one other term that I've heard in the energy world is ground zero or 0 point. It's like a place of not really experiencing any emotion, any thoughts, and just kind of being really centered. And I think that meditation kind of brings you back to a place of feeling that, to not really experiencing that level, like especially when you're feeling off. It kind of brings you back. So
It's
thank you so much. That was powerful.
I'm happy. Like I had so much stuff I wanted to share with you guys, but yoga nidra has been groundbreaking in my life. And you can literally YouTube a 5 minute yoga nidra. I do one personally 3 different times a day. I can physiologically feel the shift into that relaxation mode. And at the end of the day, I look at it like this. We have one life. Yeah, we got a lot to do. Sure, it's busy, but are we going to be so busy worrying about getting stuff done that we miss living our own life? I don't
Yeah.
want to live that way. And personally, having a regular practice of doing yoga nidra really helps ground me to be present, even in the crap. I even want to experience the crap.
You know what? The thing about experiencing crap is when you experience crap, you know what you don't want, you know what you do want. So you
Mm,
know where to move forward. You know what you do want. You want to move forward in a different direction. And it's life changing if you look at it like that. Like you said, everything's working out for you. And
mhm.
you just know that this was a realization. Okay, now that light switched on, the thermostat changed, as you said, thermostat's changing. I'm moving in a different direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, Laura, thank you so much. And I guess we're going to kind of get ready to close here. I want to share at the end of these, we like to share a little product promo since ProCare is our sponsor. So you guys are going to see me share my screen here for just a second. And I'm going to share about one of our products we really don't talk that often about. It is a product Okay. It allowed me now. I guess we were both sharing at the same time. I didn't
Yeah.
realize I couldn't do that. I'm going to share my entire screen here for just a second. Okay. Sorry. Taking a moment. And here's what I have. So, are you wanting more protein and collagen in your diet? A lot of times people talk about this being of interest to them after weight loss surgery. For one thing, collagen is a protein. People may not realize that collagen is a protein, and basically, we know how important protein is as being, a builder for our muscles, our muscle fibers, and all of that. Collagen helps with basically helping them to be more pliable. It helps with regeneration. It helps with just skin regeneration in general. And I'm going to kind of pop on here. We have a product called Liquicell, and this is actually 16 grams of protein, 2.5 grams of arginine, which is a type of protein. It is 100% USA collagen. It does contain all essential and non-essential amino acids because there are several different types of amino acids. Some of them your body makes, some of them your body doesn't. We have 7 different flavors. There's no mixing. You can put it in water. You can put it in a drink mix, or you can drink it straight like a shooter. I like drinking them just straight. They're only 1 ounce. They're small, and you can take them along. My sister, who is a runner, I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'll share where you can find them. She runs daily, and she uses them just kind of as a little pick me up, as in a little extra protein. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to share one more time, and I'll show you how to find them. So if you go up, and hopefully you guys can you see what I'm sharing here yet by chance?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. It takes it a second on my end for me to be able to see. So if you go to the ProCare Health website, if you're on Crowdcast, there's a little tab, a call to action button, but I'll copy this and also put it in the comment section on Facebook. On the ProCare Health website, when you get there, there's going to be this first button. It has all different kinds of labels here. Under proteins, if you go there, it is the second little one here under Liquicell. And here's all the different flavors that we carry. There's also a variety pack. And so here's where everything's listed. There's more information. If you go down, you can kind of look at descriptions, supplemental facts, reviews. There is also a website. I'm looking to see if it's on here. If you go to Global Nutrition or just type in Liquicell recipes, under Google, you should be able to come up with all kinds of Liquicell recipes. I had that before we started, but for some reason I don't have it here in my notes. But there's tons of different recipes you can make with Liquicell if you're just wanting to mix it with something. Here's a few favorite ways to use underneath here. So I'm gonna stop sharing. Also, guys, too, I always like to mention we do offer free samples at ProCare. If you go here under this tab, there's a short little form that you fill out. There's absolutely no charge. We don't even charge shipping and handling. You can get a free ProCare product if you've never tried ProCare before. ProCare is known for being one of the least expensive out there on the market as far as bariatric vitamins, and just supreme good quality. So that is my little take. I'll put the link here in both chat boxes, in the Facebook, and also in here in Crowdcast. So got those. And I think we're closing. So I just want to thank each of you for spending your day with Laura and I. Like she said, we truly appreciate it. Time is valuable. It's a valuable, and thank you for being here with us. And thank you for spending it on yourself, because you're making this world a better place just by empowering yourself and finding ways, tools. And I don't know, Laura, if that's how you feel, but that's what's got me interested in this field of personal development and being on these kind of calls. Education is powerful, because the more you know, the more you can do for yourself. You don't have to rely on everybody else all the time.
Yes, I definitely agree. And I second your message. Time is valuable. And I really do appreciate you guys being on here. And information is powerful. it's the first step. The second step is application. So just make sure you're clear with yourself about how you want to apply whatever you learn, and work with yourself instead of trying to change everything all at once.
Yeah, little baby steps. Sometimes it's hard when how you know if your steps are working, reevaluate each day and like take a step back and just say, you know what? Reevaluate. Tomorrow, you know what? I could do this a little different. This didn't work out. This did work out. Be patient with yourself because you Rome wasn't built in a day, right, Laura?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, guys. Well, we're gonna stop